The following story was suggested by our supporter. They say a candle's flame is meant to chase away the dark. But what if the light was the only thing keeping the dark from chasing you? I first heard the story of the widow's candle when I traveled through a small mountain village in the north. The villagers still want to go near the old cottage that sits at the edge of the woods. They say the house was cursed, not because of the woman who lived there, but because of the light she kept burning. Her name was Elspeth. She had lived through sickness, famine, and loss. By the time she was 40, the plague had taken her husband and 2 children. Grief followed her, and she lived in silence, with only one thing left to comfort her: a single wax candle carved by her husband. On their wedding day, it was said that when she lit it after his death, the flame never dimmed. Day and night, the wick burned steady and the candle never shortened. Neighbors whispered that she had made a bargain with something she shouldn't have, that her tears had been heard by spirits who now guarded her house. At first, it was only a curiosity. People came to see the miracle candle, but the longer it burned, the stranger things became. Elspeth complained of shadows that shifted on the walls even when she stood perfectly still. At night, she heard scratching in the rafters, though no rats were ever found. Visitors swore they heard low voices when they passed through her door, murmurs that stopped as soon as they stepped inside. And always in the center of the room was the candle. It stood on a wooden table, its flame steady and bright, no matter how cold the wind howled outside. One evening, after years of isolation, Elspeth grew tired of the whispers and the endless glow. She tried to blow out the candle. The flame flickered violently, but refused to die. She tried again, harder until her lungs ached, but the flame only grew taller, stretching thin like a needle. In frustration, she pinched the wick between her fingers. It seared her skin, leaving her with a black scar. The light remained. From that night forward, she noticed something terrible. The shadows in her home began to gather closer to the flame. They weren't hers. They didn't match her shape or her movements. At first, it was only when she was half asleep, a trick of the eye. But soon the shadows leaned forward as if watching her, their long, crooked arms stretching toward her bed. Elspeth begged the local priest for help. He refused to enter the house, but from her doorway, he shouted a blessing. The candle sputtered once, then flared brighter. As if mocking his words, the priest left in fear and never returned. Nights became unbearable. The shadows no longer waited at the edges of the walls. They began crowding around her bed frame. She described hearing them breathe, a low, rattling inhale, as if air was being sucked from her lungs. She tried to flee the house once, candle in hand, but the flame refused to leave. No matter how far she ran, the light remained fixed in her cottage, glowing through the window, and without its glow to protect her, the woods themselves seemed to turn against her. She returned home, shaking, never trying again. The villagers said her screams could be heard on the last night of her life. A terrible storm blew through the valley, and lightning struck her roof. The fire spread, consuming the house, but not before several men claimed they saw the candle still burning on the table, flame untouched. When the storm passed, nothing remained of Elspeth's home but ash. Yet the candle was found standing upright in the ruins, flames still dancing untouched. No one dared to touch it. The men buried it deep in the earth at the edge of the woods. But they say even now on moonless nights, you can see a faint orange glow flickering between the trees, as though the candle found its way back to the surface. And sometimes travelers swear they hear whispers in the dark, circling them, waiting for the moment when the flame finally dies. Thank you for listening. And if you would like to help us bring you more stories like this one, please consider supporting us.